Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here and welcome to BBallBreakdown. Today I'm bringing on Will Garcia, who wrote a really interesting piece on hardwoodparoxysm.com, or the fan-sided network, where he talked about racial biases basically in NBA scouting. So Will, I wanted to bring you on and just give us a quick overview of where did you come up with the idea to write this article?
Okay, so I was just talking with some friends, and the inevitable Doug McDermott, Larry Bird thing kind of came up. And then you know how that kind of turns into the Doug McDermott, Adam Morrison thing. So I want to take a little bit of a closer look into it to see if there was some sort of empirical proof, I guess, of what is actually going on here.
What's interesting, I think, is what you found. So you dug a little deeper. You got some extra analytics going in, and so give us a little idea of the process there. And was that a hard process to find all those numbers? And what did you discover?
The hard part of the process, I think I'm going to start with just talking about the process first so we can get into the results. The hardest thing actually was managing the data and just finding out, essentially, because it's not like there's a directory of, NBA players by race. That'd be kind of screwed up. So there's a lot of manual entry, a lot of in Excel typing out comparisons. So what I did was I went to two major websites that do player comparisons and scouting reports. And then that all got logged into a database of who the player, the name of the prospect, the year they were drafted in. Eventually, I went in and put in their win shares, the player that they got compared to, and then the comparisons win shares. So that wound up being just a lot of manual entry for a database, that doesn't really exist. So you're in there just typing for 20, 30 hours of about 700, 800 players. Just finding all that information out. So that's how that all worked out. The results for the player comparisons, there was a bit more that went into the article than just that, but for the player comparisons, we saw that 70% of white American NBA prospects were getting compared to either other white American prospects or white European prospects. We saw a similar number for white European prospects, and then for black American prospects, it was 96% of those prospects were being compared to other black American players.
There's ramifications here, I suppose, that we don't even need to get into, I think, racially, because what I'm more interested in is, well, how accurate are we? Because whether or not they're comparing a white player to a white player or a black player to a black player, I'm kind of curious, is it accurate? Are they actually getting anywhere near what they're saying, or is that comparison anywhere close? So that's something that you looked at as well, correct?
Correct. Ian Levy, super amazing out on Nylon Calculus now.
Yes, we love you, Ian.
We love you. You're awesome. He let me borrow his. He let me borrow his. He has a thing called Similarity Scores for prospects, where he looked at. He found some sort of a metric that looked at player size, age, college performance, and then compared it to other NCAA players who made it into the NBA. So basically, it's a numerical player comparison. So essentially, in Similarity Scores, 1,000 means that a player's size, age, and college performance is literally identical to another player.
Oh.
Once you get lower and lower, it gets a bit more murky and a little bit less similar. Okay. So based on what I saw, 800 to like 850 was about the average kind of run-of-the-mill common comparison. It isn't really the type of thing that frequently gets used in this sort of research where you're looking at actual player comparisons and comparing them to the numbers, but about 800 to 850 is where a typical player comparison that a scout would make would usually lie.
Okay, so what you're saying is, so 850, now that is pretty close to 1,000, right? So you're saying that they actually are getting their similarities close. They're picking the right player to compare the prospect to, correct?
Yeah, it's pretty decent. It's pretty good. And then another thing for accuracy was that for an average season, all black American and white American prospects both got overestimated by a similar number of win shares. So both guys were being seen a little bit overzealously.
So what you saw was, yeah, people are just sort of over forecasting what they're going to do in the NBA, no matter who they are, and they never quite ever reach up to that value. You're seeing that. Is there one group that was getting overestimated more than another group as far as win shares?
I'd say it's kind of tricky. Black Americans and white American prospects, it was basically the same. White European prospects, it clocked in a bit higher, but it was pretty funny. Like I noted in the piece, once you take out Dirk comparisons, it becomes identical. So it's like stop making Dirk comps and we're all the same.
Right. So here's the problem. So everyone is much too quick to go to the Dirk comparison when you're talking about any kind of
there's like
European.
4 or 5 of those in there that really just messed things up.
Okay, interesting. Well, you know, I think that this is a real interesting discussion because certainly, you know, the accuracy of a scouting report is really tantamount to anything else, right? We want to be able to figure out who these players are, who they're going to project into, who they're going to play like. And so, what you know, if we could shine some light into some common errors that we're doing, it seems like just out of you know, what we've been doing the last 30, 40, 50 years, it sounds like people are kind of stuck in a rut here. Perhaps they need to get out of their shell a little bit and look at the game a little bit more. I don't want to say more diversified, but certainly maybe they'd be a lot more accurate if we can get out of that the norms of how they're categorizing people.
I think that's definitely a very solid point. And this is something that's been going on since the early 1900s, just these sort of racial categories of, especially when you look at common stereotypes among white players and black players. You see how they're the same in pretty much every sport. You have the black player athletic myth, and you have the white player smart, skilled myth. And it's been going on, really, it started off as a coping mechanism in the early 1900s as, and you get the guy's name, Alex Diamond. Is who I referenced in this piece. He's a student out for somewhere. Somewhere university is where his bachelor's paper is from. But he noted it, and it started off as a coping mechanism in the early 1900s when sports became more integrated, because it's kind of hard to uphold notions of white supremacy if there are black players and athletes coming in and beating white players. So it becomes kind of a dissonant way to think. So those stereotypes formed, and then now we're still seeing carryover. Sure.
Well, you know, it's a fascinating idea what you brought up, and I love the fact that you brought some stats into it to show how the accuracy is going here. And I encourage everybody to head over to the website to check out the article because it has more in-depth information for you. And, you know, keep us updated. I think this would be a worthwhile study to keep going further to see how we're going, Will. So thanks for coming on the show. And don't forget, sports fans, at BBallBreakdown, we're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in?
Oh, I'm in.